Hey, I'm Jake, and today on the Steaming Pile, we're talking about 6 Christmas/holiday demons. Let's get right to it with number 1, from Iceland, the Yule Cat, Jólakötturinn. Yes, the Yule Cat is a giant demonic cat that stalks around Iceland, feeding on those who are not dressed properly for winter. Yes, that's right, parents in Iceland tell their kids that if they don't put on proper winter clothing, gloves, coats, etc., that they will be hunted down like field mice and gobbled up by a large demonic cat. Watch out, Sven. Watch out, Bjork. If you don't wear your gloves, Jólakötturinn will get to you. Now, this isn't just a tradition practiced by families and parents telling their children this. Supposedly, decades ago, farmers and business owners would also have the tradition of giving winter clothing to their workers that performed well. So just imagine your performance review was essentially like, wow, Sven, you did a great job. Here's a coat. But you, Gunther, you lazy piece of crap, here's a bikini. Have fun dying at the hands of a giant cat. Just imagine your Christmas bonus being nice winter clothes or shit all and death at the hands of a giant cat. Which also, here's what I don't understand about this whole thing. I like the tradition and all, it seems pretty great, but in order for this to have survived, at least on the adults' end, wouldn't someone have to have been maimed or killed? Like, oh man, Bjorn's really just not cutting it this year. We gave everybody else cool winter coats, and we gave him threadbare socks. Yeah, one of us is going to have to kill him, so people keep believing in the cat. Yeah, I guess one of us is going to have to kill him. I just wonder how many murders, maimings, and beatings that people had to receive to keep this tradition alive, or at least in the hearts of adults. Next up, we've got, again from Iceland, Grýla, the Ogress Witch. Grýla figures into quite a bit of Icelandic folklore, is actually the owner of the Yule Cat, is the mother of the Yule Lads, which I believe there are about 13 of them. We may do a separate video on them at some point. Anyway, back to Grýla. Grýla, the ogress witch who lives in the wilds or mountains of Iceland, has several tales that are told about her. Outside of Christmas, apparently during Lent, she comes down from the mountains to carve out the stomachs of those children who would cry about not being able to eat meat during the Lent season. And on top of this, she has the typical holiday, keep children in line sort of legend where she will descend from the mountains to snatch up misbehaving children, to turn them into stew and grind their bones into bread. And next we have a Pennsylvania Dutch tradition in the form of the Belschnickel. Now, the Belschnickel is depicted in a few different ways, but typically a hairy, haggard man clad in furs. The tradition typically would be a man dressed as the Belschnickel would come up to the homestead of a family, rap 3 times on the door, and then be admitted in by the adults of the household. The parents would gather their children in front of the Belschnickel. The Belschnickel would then sit in judgment of all the children had done over the years. Now, this went a few different ways. The Belschnickel, the man clad in furs, would carry a birch paddle and a sack of treats. The treats were typically hard candies and nuts. Now, what you had to do in front of the Belschnickel was to recount all of the bad deeds you had done, if you had done any, during that year. If you were honest about the bad deeds, you would receive a light rap on the knuckles from the paddle. If you lied about anything you had done, or just did not tell the truth and the parents / the Belschnickel knew, you would get beaten. Holidays. Anyway, after standing in judgment of the Belschnickel, if you had done well, you would be required to recite something you had learned from the year, like maybe some sort of mathematical formula, a new farming technique, a Bible verse, or whatnot. And the Belschnickel, having been pleased by your deeds, would then throw treats on the ground for you to eat. Nuts and candies and so forth. But if you dove just a little too eagerly, were a little too excited for the candies, and dove too greedily, you might get a quick strike from the Belschnickel's paddle while you were gathering up your prize. In summation, with the Belschnickel, even in victory, you could still lose. And also, if you get a whipping from the Belschnickel for diving too fast for the treats, do you have to tell them about it next year? Standing up there, little Timothy, Also, I was a mite too eager when the nuts and the candies were strewn at my feet, and I dove like a whore who was eager to receive financial recompense from the sexual contract she had entered into only minutes ago. And if you didn't tell him, would you get a beating for not telling him? I don't know. The Belschnickel thing, it's a little too Amish for me, a little too weird. I don't quite understand the rules. Alright, next we have one of my personal favorites, Père Foutard. I don't speak French, so that was probably a terrible pronunciation, but it translates to Father Whipper. I very much enjoy this story. So Father Whipper is a French legend that involves a butcher. 3 boys who were lost in the woods were one day seemingly rescued by what appeared to be a kindly butcher. It in fact was not a kindly butcher, as the would-be savior of the boys decided instead of returning them to their parents, he would take them to his butcher shop, massacre them, and take their body parts and place them in salt barrels to cure. And as it so happens, while they were curing, over the course of weeks, months, not too sure, Santa Claus would come into the butcher's shop. Because we all know how much Santa craves sweet, delicate cuts of meat. The butcher, recognizing old Saint Nick, offers to sell him his finest cuts of meat. Santa, recognizing the situation, because I guess butchers murdering children and selling their meat was a common occurrence in years past in France, Santa then resurrects the boys and proceeds to enslave the butcher, turning him into Father Whipper, his demonic servant who metes out punishment to children during the holidays. Now, granted, he's not able to murder boys and sell their sweet, sweet, succulent meat to unsuspecting citizens, but he is able to menace children, and occasionally, it seems like from the legends, eat them. So it really seems more like a promotion than a punishment. And while we're at it, let's not forget the boys that he resurrected. It doesn't say anything about Santa removing the trauma of having been murdered by a butcher and then having to watch him be turned into a demonic slave for Father Christmas. So essentially, you've just resurrected boys who know what it feels like to be butchered alive and stuffed into barrels. So yes, it's a gift, but it's also a curse because they probably have the worst case of PTSD in the history of humankind. But hey, that's how Santa rolls in France. Next up, from Wales, we've got Marie-Lude, spelled as and pronounced
Marie-Lude.
Or, if you're an English speaker in America, pronounced
Grey Mari.
In modern times, Marie-Lude is a parade where a skeletal spiritual horse with sackcloth is paraded through the town. However, what I could tell from doing a little bit of research is essentially what the Welsh people used to believe is that this skeletal horse would parade around town looking for dwellings, spouting poetry, rhyming, singing, and essentially what you would have to do if it stopped at your house is engage it, and there's really no other way to say it, basically a rap battle. You have to rap battle a skeletal horse for your home. No word is to what happens to you if you lose. Do you just have to let the demonic horse lodge in your home for an indeterminate amount of time? Do you lose your home? Do you have to sign over the deed to the dead horse? Like, is this all a hellish real estate scam to take over all of Wales and then the world? We may never know. I do like the idea of if this was still a super serious tradition and not just a holdover from the pagan past, where they're very afraid of a skeletal horse trying to take their home or stay in their home. Because, again, if you lose, you do have to give it admittance. I like the idea of the people of Wales having to put on rap albums and blasting them from their homes to keep the horse away. That guy spits fire, I best not fucks with that. Or you could tell that the rapper that you're listening to is shitty if the horse still rolls up like, no, I can take him. Anyway, moving on to the last one, the best known Christmas demon, the king of Christmas demons, the Krampus. Yep, that's right, the Krampus. If you haven't heard of the Krampus, then I don't know what to tell you, because if you've heard of any Christmas demon, you've probably heard of the Krampus. He's appeared in comics, cartoons, movies, novels, artwork, books, just any place you could imagine a naughty child hanging out or a future sex offender. Now, the tradition of Krampusnacht, which is the Night of Krampus, is a holdover from pagan times. Krampusnacht is still celebrated in Austria. Krampus, much like Father Whipper, is Satan's demonic right-hand man, and he punishes bad children. Now, Austria, on December 5th, during the Krampusnacht festival, has a parade of people dressed as Krampus who travel the streets shaking chains and branch paddles at children and scaring them. It's all designed to keep children in line and have them behave for the holidays. In legend, the Krampus was known to sometimes beat disobedient children, sometimes stuff them in a sack and drag them away to be tortured or eaten, or even sometimes just kill them on the spot. Now, the Krampus in legend is known to visit the homes of disobedient children and stuff them in sacks and drag them away to be tortured or eaten, or just beat them in their homes, and various other tortures. Now, I know some of these Christmas folklore legends or Christmas demons bleed into each other, have some similarities, but that's because their roots are in the same geographic area and the same sort of pagan traditions, Western and Northern Europe to be more precise. And though these demons were fairly vicious and brutal towards children, I think we can all agree it's not nearly as bad as what's happened to the children on Epstein Island. Anyway, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. I threw the hat to try to hang it. It hit the thing, but it didn't hit the lens. So I was just like, Feliz Navidad, y'all. It's the steam at night.